Okay, this is going to be the recap of session 1 since we forgot to hit record on the live stream. Alright, here we go. Years since the fall. -10. It is a beautiful green world with rolling hills, flourishing plants and animals. But a man sits on a rock and he only sees sand. What the world will eventually become. And he's crying, and he has eyes that are just this pale blue with no iris. And a woman lays her head on his shoulder lovingly, and he says, "They sent me here to warn them, and they didn't believe me." And she says, "Shh, I believe you. Together we will stop this from happening. All you have to do is take my hand." And as he takes her hand, they glow and they turn into something else. 538 years since the fall. The world is now an endless desert called the Never End. Nothing can exist there and is consumed by sand demons upon entering. But in this desert is the city of Onyx, self-sustaining and one of 7 cities left in the world. It has sky-high towers and anything anyone can need. It is a bastion of civilization. We enter with Lyla, who is a half-elf with purple hair, sleeping in an attic in one of the seedier parts of town. And there is a translucent green tiefling floating beside her who wakes her up because there's rapid knocking on her door and she would not wake up. She gets out of bed and opens the door to Jewel, who is a tabaxi, who tells her to get out of bed and go get breakfast with her. So she gets ready and takes her little black cat Mistra along with her. And throughout breakfast, it is mainly Jewel talking to Lyla and Lyla just listening, until an orc man comes up to them and tells them that Cain wants to see them. As they enter his office, he is pulling his sword from a man's chest, whose body then thunks to the floor. He apologizes for the mess and that they had to see that, but they both seem not too bothered by this. He says he has a job for Jewel and gives Lyla a scroll of paper. It is an official acceptance letter into the Skyrider organization and to meet at a man's office tomorrow. She thanks him for the letter and tells him that she got into the Skyriders, and he seems excited for her. Then they go into a shop. It's called Joyce's Choice. It is a front for the Thieves Guild and owned by a little old gnome woman named Joyce, who gives Lyla a black coffee to go, and she heads out to go about her day. Then we move on to Satevis, a tiefling who approaches a druidic circle, the Druidic Circle of Stars headquarters, which is essentially just a normal apartment building that's been repurposed with star decor. Upon entering, there is a man sitting in a meditation pose, and they have to wake him up. This man's name is Raymond and says that there is a message for them. which was the acceptance letter into the Skyriders. Although Satevis is very late to the meeting, because they cannot navigate without the stars. They also tell Satevis that their sibling, the older one, came by and asked where Satevis was, and he seemed frantic, but did not cause any trouble yet. Then we move to Umbra, a red tiefling who is in the midst of a nightmare. It's a stormy night, and a woman is holding a small stone in her hand while she holds him down with the other. And then he just sees wriggling worms and maggots in the dirt, and finally he wakes up to his twin sister Gloom handing him a scroll, which is very similar to the one she is holding in her own hands, the acceptance letter to Skyriders. But then she asks, "What are we going to tell Dad?" They decide Gloom will break the news to him as they head to talk to them and have breakfast with him in a house that is more similar to large private barracks and a very bare bones. It is the household of an upper member of the Great Unification. Gloom throws Umbra under the bus and says he has something to tell him, and so he breaks the news that he is going to be joining the Skyriders. To which he does not like. He says, "You did not consult us?" And there is wriggling underneath his skin can be seen. But eventually he comes to terms with this. Then we move to Ace, a blue Yuan-Ti living in a Transylvania-esque castle in the upper part of the city, and they are in the midst of a family breakfast. He sits next to his grandma and a parent. Grandma asks if he's going to be making a bid for his father's position, and he tells her that he has something in the works. And it's clear he is Grandma's favorite. His uncle pats him on the shoulder and hands him a scroll, which is the same scroll of recruitment from the Skyriders. Next day, they all head to the Skyriders' headquarters. It's one of the largest buildings in the city, 20 stories high, and there's lots of people going in and out due to trade connections or travel purposes. The office they are supposed to go to is on the 14th floor, to the office of Tobias Greenlee. Umbra arrives first and sees a halfling man as the secretary, who tells him to take a seat in the waiting room. But there is also a halfling kid there who seems to be about 18 years old, sitting in the waiting area with a burn scar on the side of his face, and his name is Artie. Next, Lyla arrives, and then Ace shows up, but first tries to snoop around the building, but cannot get anywhere, so goes up to the office of Tobias Greenlee. But as soon as Ace walks in, Artie looks terrified. Next, Satevis stumbles in, And Artie has a very similar reaction as he did with Ace. But Satevis seems to recognize Lyla and calls her Lady Avi and says she changed their life. Lyla says, "Oh really? I'm glad I could help," and takes his hands, their hands, taking the rings from their hands as they do so. She informs the other that she is a spirit medium and runs a stand where she does palm reading and other psychic activities. She gives Umbra a palm reading and tells him he will die young but be extremely successful. They take this to mean that Umbra should be the captain of their team. Lyla also picks up that Satevis knows Ace. And Ace knows Satevis but acts like they don't. Then an orc man walks out in a bright pink suit. His name is Toby and he is their contractor. And he says there's a special guest to give us a tour. Katya Linder comes in, a warforged woman who formed the Skyriders, to give us the tour. She is one of the few people alive to experience the time before the fall, and she almost single-handedly brought the cities out of their dark times with the Skyrider organization. She shows us the training center, which looks like a jungle, and there is an older-looking furbolg with an eye patch of golden brambles. His name is Erkin, and he is from the time the Skyriders was first created. And also, we can exchange gold for upgrades and skills, proficiencies, abilities, etc. There's also a mini market and shops to sell, trade, and buy, and a residential area, which we are given an apartment to live in. It's 4 bedrooms, and there are guest rooms in other cities. And then she brings us to a room that is a dingy bar called the Tipsy Rider, with a bartender called Sterling, who's a red dragonborn, which technically is not allowed, but they let it slide under the radar. And they are taken to a rooftop, which is a circular disc, and there is zeppelins on top of it. That is where the Skyriders depart and arrive. We are given a smaller ship, a starter ship, which can be given upgrades as time goes on. Zynos, a satyr, walks up and shakes our hands. He is the harbor master. And we are told we can name our ship, so we call it the Shardy 2. Ship Artie. And then Katya offers us a job that is higher stakes but pays more than anything Tobias could offer. We are given the job to go investigate the wreckage of a ship called the Crown Jewel and take back some of the precious cargo left on board. The anonymous anonymous employer wants at least 5 artworks back that was left on the ship, and any other treasures are fair game. So we are given this job and are allowed to go our separate ways. Before this, though, Lyla stops Artie to ask why Ace and Satevis scare him so much. Artie tells her that the Lucero family and the Algol family are bad people, that they belong to them. And Lyla remembers and knows quite well that the Lucero family is one of the most prominent crime family and dipped into every facet of crime. They are problem solvers run by someone called the Midnight Star, which is recognized as the head of the family. Ace is the child of the head of the family, the Midnight Star. Now, the Algol family is the enforcer family for the Luceros. They are bodyguards, loan sharks, enforcers. But Satevis Algol dropped off the face of the earth a few years ago and has not been heard from since. Artie tells her he is here because his family owes the Lucero family a lot of money. His name is Artie Sven, and Satevis' brother was the one who burned the side of his face. Artie advises Lyla that they should keep their eye on them. And that is where session 1 ended.